Senator King.
Mr. Secretary, I'm somewhat puzzled. I grew up in Virginia where Robert E. Lee was revered. I think when I was a kid, his birthday was a school holiday. But as I grew older and learned more about American history, I learned that he fit the classic definition of a traitor. He took up arms against his country. He broke his oath as a member of the United States Army, which he took upon entering his career at West Point. Why are you going through these incredible gymnastics, finding current soldiers or other soldiers to rename? And you slipped a minute ago. You said we're returning these bases to their original names. Robert E. Lee, leading general of the Confederacy, Pickett, the other names. Why are you doing this? I don't understand what the motivation is to rename bases for people who took up arms against their country on behalf of slavery. What possible motivation can there be for this? Who is telling you to do this? Who is urging you to do this?
Senator, the veterans and service members across the country who have deployed from Fort Bragg or Fort Benning or Fort Hood or Fort Pickett, there's a legacy, there's a connection to those bases and to those places, to what they trained for there, what they did for, and what they came home back to. That matters to them. Ask enough of them, as I do, all the time, before and later. And we recognize the service of those who were put into the replacement. No one's disputing that. I would never dispute that. What we're looking at is erasing history, erasing names, erasing base names that service members are tied to. Talk to people that serve at Bragg. Ask people that serve at Fort Bragg or Fort Benning if they like the fact that the names have been returned. And to a man and to a woman, they will tell you, thank God we're back to Fort Bragg, and thank God we're back. And thankfully, because so many men and women in this country have served, there's a Benning and a Bragg and a Pickett and a Hood has a Silver Star or a Medal of Honor that we could rename the base to because of the limits of what Congress allowed us to do. So this is something we've been proud to do, something that's important for the morale of the Army, and those communities appreciate that we've returned it back to what it was instead of trying to play this game of erasing names.
What you just watched isn't just another routine Senate hearing, it's a full-blown collision between two completely different visions of what America is supposed to stand for. Senator Angus King comes in with a simple but devastating premise. You don't honor people who betrayed their country, full stop. And yet here we are, watching the Pentagon bend over backwards to justify bringing back names tied directly to the Confederacy men who literally took up arms against the United States to defend slavery. King isn't confused, and he isn't buying the spin. When he asks, "Why are you doing this?" that's not a casual question, it's an indictment. Because the answer he's getting from Pete Hegseth isn't really an answer at all. It's a deflection wrapped in sentiment. Legacy, tradition, morale, those are the words being thrown around. But let's be honest, those words collapse the moment you remember what those names actually represent. This isn't about soldiers feeling nostalgic about where they trained. This is about whether the U.S. military should continue to attach its identity to figures who fought to destroy the very country those soldiers swear to defend. And what makes this even more staggering is the mental gymnastics on display, trying to reframe this as preserving history instead of confronting it. King cuts right through that illusion. He makes it crystal clear. Recognizing history doesn't mean glorifying its worst chapters. And yet the defense being offered sounds less like a principled stance and more like a carefully constructed excuse to avoid confronting uncomfortable truths. Because once you strip away the rhetoric, what's left is a deeply troubling question. Why is there such a strong push to restore names tied to a rebellion against the United States? That's not about unity. That's not about honoring service. That's about something else entirely, and King knows it.
We're not erasing history, Mr. Secretary. We're recognizing history and recognizing that mistakes have been made in this country. The greatest of all was the Civil War, where people took up arms against their country on behalf of the institution of slavery. And to continue the practice of recognizing those people and honoring them by the naming of these bases is, I believe, an insult to the people of the United States. Let me talk about the budget. I don't understand why the budget is coming to us in two pieces. Why not give us an honest base budget instead of putting a piece of it in reconciliation? As I understand it, OMB is saying we're going to have a flat defense budget for the next 4 or 5 years. Are we planning reconciliation every year from now on? Why not give us an honest budget telling us what your priorities are, and then we can consider it. This committee always works in a bipartisan basis on a defense budget. We all want to see some increases in the defense budget, and yet you're giving us this this fake, here's a piece of the budget, here's another. You're cutting, in the base budget, you're cutting shipbuilding in half and saying, well, we're going to make it up in reconciliation. Are we going to have reconciliation every year, which basically, by the way, puts a significant part, 10 or 15% of the defense budget, in a wholly partisan decision-making process, whereas in the history of this committee, it's always been bipartisan. Why are we doing it this way?
Senator, from our view, the budget number 961 meets the requirements and threats that we face. And
that's not the number. The number is 892.6. You're adding reconciliation. That's my whole point. Why not give us a base budget of 961 or whatever the right number is, what you consider the right number, and then we can operate and make our decisions. Why do it in this bifurcated way that really is fooling the American people about what the defense budget is?
We're not trying to fool anybody, sir. It's two bills, one budget. We're working with OMB, and we feel very comfortable with the number of $961 billion.
Why don't you give us a straight-up budget for the Defense Department? That's my question.
Senator, this is a straight-up budget for the Defense Department, and it's a 13% increase over what Joe Biden gave us.
It is a two-part defense budget. Part of it is in reconciliation instead of in the budget that's being presented to this committee. This committee only has a partial review of the budget. I don't understand why we can't have an honest, straightforward budget instead of this son of Oko that you're putting over on us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And then the conversation shifts, but the pattern doesn't change. Because when King pivots to the defense budget, what you see is the exact same playbook complexity used as camouflage. He's not nitpicking numbers. He's calling out what looks like a deliberate attempt to obscure reality. A split budget, part in the base, part hidden in reconciliation, sold as one budget, when in practice it functions as two, and that's where the alarm bells start ringing. King is essentially asking, if this is the real number, why not just say it? Why not present it cleanly, transparently, and let Congress do its job? Instead, what he's getting is a bureaucratic maze that makes it harder to track priorities, harder to debate trade-offs, and easier to push through decisions without full scrutiny. And that's the real issue here. It's not just about dollars. It's about accountability. Because once you start slicing the budget into pieces and running part of it through reconciliation, you're not just changing the math, you're changing the process. You're shifting something that has historically been bipartisan into a more partisan lane, where fewer voices have real influence. And King is clearly fed up with it. You can hear it in the way he keeps pressing the same point over and over. Why not be honest about the number? Why not treat Congress, and by extension the American people, like they deserve the full picture? What makes this moment so powerful is that it exposes a broader pattern. Whether it's the naming of military bases or the structuring of a massive defense budget, the same strategy keeps showing up: wrap controversial decisions in vague language, complicate the details, and hope no one pushes too hard. But King does push, and when he does, the cracks start to show.